So two massive matchups of the Rugby Championship are just around the corner. The Springboks taking on the All Blacks in South Africa. And there are a lot of decisions that do need to be made for these two sides, including who they will go with in their starting lineups. And in this video, I am going to give my Springboks XV that I would love to see play up against the All Blacks. Now, I should mention we will also have an All Blacks XV video coming out later on, so be sure to check that out as well. But looking through at the front row, I feel like this is where it is relatively simple for the Springboks, although we do see the return of Steven Kitshoff now, coming back from his injury, which has left him out for quite some time. But I would still go with Oxnard number 1, number 2 Bongi Mbonambi, and number 3 Frans Malherbe. Now, Steven Kitshoff later on in the Rugby Championship, there is a chance we could see him move into the starting side. But I think for now, seeing as he's had so much time away from that jersey, at most off the bench is where you would play Steven Kitshoff for these contests. Bongi Mbonambi, you could go with Malcolm Marx, but he seems to be that real impact player when he does make his way off the bench. So if it isn't broken, the Springboks do not need to fix it. And then Frans Malherbe, you just got to look at the guy to know that he's going to be pretty handy when it comes to a scrum out there up against the All Blacks, who maybe have a few question marks in their number 1 jersey, seeing as Ethan de Groot will not be available for the ABs in these matchups. But moving on to the locking duo, number 4, Eben Etzebeth. Not really too much of a challenge there, I would say, in terms of who could take that number 4 jersey. Number 5, though, this is where it does get a little bit more interesting. We've seen the likes of a Ruan Nokia get a chance up against Australia. We saw Pieter-Steph du Toit even play a game at lock when there was the last-minute injury for RG Snyman. But for the first match, as well as the second, I believe RG Snyman would be the best option for the Springboks. Now, they may look to switch it up a little bit. I saw Jansie van Rensburg is a name that has been thrown into the hat as a possible locking option. They've got Moura, they've got Ruan Nokia, but I would still say that RG Snyman is the best option for the number 5, even though he had such a big impact off the bench for the Springboks. But moving on to the loose forward trio. Number 6, I have gone with the captain, Siya Kolisi. Number 7, this is where I have got Pieter-Steph du Toit. Now, I was a little bit tempted to move Pieter-Steph du Toit to number 5 and have Ben Jason Dixon as the number 7. He's done pretty well throughout the minutes that he's been given for the Springboks, but I still feel Pieter-Steph du Toit, there is no way that that man can be left out of a starting side. They have decided to give him that role of 7 quite often, so I don't see it changing for a game up against the All Blacks. Number 8, I'll be honest, I have really struggled with this position when choosing my Springboks XV. That much so, I still have it blank. Now, there are quite a few options. There's Jasper Wiese, seeing as he is now coming back from his suspension. You've got Kwagga Smith, who, yes, would be a very great option to start the matches up against New Zealand, but anytime we see Kwagga come off the bench, he almost adds more impact than when he starts in a game. But I feel like for me, he is probably my front runner for that number 8 jersey. Then there's Elric Lowe. Has played pretty well throughout the Rugby Championship so far, but has he got the experience that the Springboks are after in their number 8 jersey? Can he handle the pressure of going up against New Zealand? I just don't know yet. He's a very good player though, Elric Lowe, and I think he would step up to the occasion if he was given the chance. But honestly, out of those 3, I'm still very undecided about who I would give number 8. So that is where you guys are actually going to come into it. I'm going to ask you, put it in the comments, who would you go with as your number 8 for the Springboks? Help me out because I am very indecisive. Can't really decide who I would go with. I think Jasper Wiese eventually will get that number 8 jersey back, but the problem we've got is similar to Steven Kitshoff in a different kind of way. He just hasn't played any rugby because the bloke got suspended. So I think he's going to need some time to come back, first of all, maybe off the bench, and then back into that starting lineup where he can find success. But moving on to the back line, we did find out the news that Faf de Klerk will not be available for these matches up against the ABs, which does bring 3 options in. Cobus Reinach, Grant Williams, and also Jaden Hendrickse actually finds his way back into the Springbok side. I have gone with Cobus Reinach as my starting 9. I really like his work around the side of the breakdown. He also offers a very solid kicking game. Grant Williams is a fantastic option, but I think if the Springboks want to go with a 6-2 split, you need the versatility of Grant Williams off the bench as your number 22. So that is why I've gone with Reinach in the starting side. Number 10, this one is very tricky. For me, it is between two men, Andre Pollard and Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu. Now, the craziest thing is, 18 months or so ago, not having Mani Libok in there would seem extremely strange. But of current form, you'd have to say that Pollard as well as Mngomezulu are up there a little bit higher than Mani Libok currently. But Andre Pollard, he's had some great experience. He's had some fantastic games up against New Zealand as well. Mngomezulu, fantastic game up against Australia in Test match number 1 of the Rugby Championship. Second match, probably at his worst game in a Springbok kit, was making a lot of errors, dropping the ball, kicking the ball out on the full, and just little mistakes that we hadn't really experienced for him at international level, which I think is exactly why they will look to use him as the number 23. So I have actually decided to go with Andre Pollard as my starting 10 in my Springboks XV. Now, it may not be so popular because, of course, Mngomezulu is the future for the Springbok side, but Andre Pollard, he can still offer you a lot right now in the present, and it might be exactly what they need to go 2-0 up over New Zealand. Moving on to the centres. Number 12, Damien de Allende. Number 13, Jesse Kriel. Lukhanyo, it seems crazy to not have him in a matchup against the All Blacks, but for now, based off current form, I would go with Damien de Allende alongside Jesse Kriel as my combination. Now, Kriel has been in sensational form all throughout 2023, 2024. He seems to just keep on getting better and better. And at the moment, I don't see that 13 jersey changing unless there is some sort of injury for Jesse Kriel. It's been that strong. Damien de Allende offering you the power game. We're not sure whether or not the All Blacks are going to be opting to stick with Jordie Barrett at number 12 based off the last game up against Argentina. Maybe you'd say he's done enough to get himself that spot up against the Boks as well. But moving on to the back three now. Number 11, this is where I've gone with Kutli Arunsa. Now, Makazole Mapimpi, he may be one of the most unlucky players over the next 12 months or so for the Springboks, mainly because every time he has a good performance, he gets taken out of the starting lineup. And because he doesn't really play off the bench, it means that he's completely out of the 23-man side on more occasions than not in the last little while. Kutli Arunsa, the man is so clinical when he's out there on the field. You have to find him somewhere in that starting side. The other man that could give way is Cheslin Colby, but once again, how do you take that man out of a starting lineup for the Springboks? So I certainly haven't. He's my number 14. The battle of the headgear out on the wings. Both try-scoring machines, and both have a real ability of lighting this Rugby Championship on fire with ball in hand. And then number 15, cool, calm and collected, you could say. Unless something annoys him, then that man will talk, and he will talk some more. I'm talking about Willie le Roux as my number 15, even though he has got a tendency of being slightly chatty, I guess you could say. Still a very solid option at number 15 for the Springboks. They've got future players such as Apalele Fasi, such as maybe even Feinberg Mngomezulu. We will see the return of Damian Willemse soon. But for now, Willie le Roux, I believe, is the strongest option at number 15 for the Springboks. He's solid under the high ball. He's got a good kicking game from the back. And also, other than the occasional little error, will give you a very good game at number 15. But that is my starting XV, ladies and gentlemen, for this lineup. If I was in charge, I would also have that 6-2 split, like I mentioned, which would involve Grant Williams and Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu coming off the bench alongside some very great impact players in the Springboks 4-pack. But do let me know your starting XV for the matches up against New Zealand. I honestly don't feel like this will be a mile off what they actually go with in the first match. Maybe if they win comfortably, that's when we see the changes made in the second contest. A little bit similar to what we saw when the Springboks did play the Australians. But thank you all very much for tuning in. When the actual lineup is announced, of course, we will have our video coming out on the channel. Also, a little bit later on, we will have a video with myself and Rugby Itch, where we do try and predict what Rassie Erasmus will go with in his Springboks side across the full 23-man team. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.